Okay, and we are live. Hello and welcome everyone to our Femmes Afictionados book club discussion for the Wolf of Oren-Yaro, which I've got right here. This is book one in the Chronicles of the Wolf Queen or the Bitch Queen.
I much prefer the Bitch Queen title, I'm not gonna lie.
I was telling someone, I was like, I'm glad there's an alternative because I can put that in all my YouTube subtitles and they won't hopefully ban my videos. Because, yeah.
Yes, definitely.
We'll debate whether or not she's actually a bitch queen as well.
Right.
Tammy. Hi, Tammy. Thanks for stopping by. So I guess as people slowly trickle in, I'll do kind of a synopsis and we'll talk spoiler-free for a little bit, and then we'll get into all the nitty-gritty and the ratings and such. So Wolf of Oren-Yaro is the first book in the, as we said, the Chronicles of the Wolf Queen or the Bitch Queen trilogy. And it is a Filipino-inspired and Filipino author trilogy, which is really great. What it basically does is it follows Queen Talien, who is a queen of one of the clans in her country or kingdom, which is called the Wolf of the Oren-Yaro clan, essentially. And she has an arranged marriage with someone from another clan, the Ikasar, because they have been at war. Those two clans have been at war for ages. And so in order to kind of broker a peace treaty, they have these two children arranged to kind of have a marriage and come together and unite the whole kingdom. What happens is they get married, and then we start off the story with this kind of very intriguing setup of Queen Talien having killed a man and exiled the prince or the king, her husband. And so we kind of start off not knowing why she killed this man, why she exiled her husband. And then we flash forward a bit and she is receiving a letter from her husband who's inviting her to kind of come to another country and essentially set up a meeting and try and kind of overcome whatever happened with them 5 years ago, I think it was. It's kind of the flashback time. And so she goes there thinking it could very well be a trap, but also very much hoping to kind of broker peace for the sake of her son that they share and the kingdom and everything like that. And she gets swept up in a lot of different kind of political shenanigans and difficult situations, and everything takes off from there.
I love that summary.
Thanks.
Because I read it so in the beginning of January, you literally just brought it all back to my head. So now I'm I remember what I actually read now.
Well, good, because I hate doing summaries, so I'm glad it wasn't too rambly.
No, definitely not. And it wasn't too spoilery.
Do you also want to introduce yourself for any of our Femmes Afictionados followers that maybe don't know you? And also, let me just say too that
was going to be my next step.
Kay's Hidden Shelf is
unfortunately
not going to be with us tonight.
Yeah,
not feeling well. But we do have Bond book reviews here, and so Crystal, you want to go ahead and
introduce myself. So I'm Crystal. I am from Australia, if you can't tell from my accent, and I have been on BookTube for around 2 years now. I do book reviews, reading vlogs. I have a TBR game called Pick Pong, which is inspired by beer pong, and then I host a yearly readathon based on Pick Pong called Pick Pongathon in August. And I read mainly a bit of everything, but my predominant genres would be thrillers, fantasies, and historical fictions. And then every time I need a palate cleanse, I read a romance. But I'm most known for my love of Ice Planet Barbarians. But I swear I read better romance than that, but that's what I'm most known for. And I have a fiance and a beautiful 8-month-old daughter, and that's pretty much me. I'm pretty cruisy.
Well, we love your channel, and you're linked in the description down below if anyone wants to follow you that doesn't already.
And I love everyone as well. I've watched from afar, so it's so fun to be a part of it now.
And I don't know if you want to do an intro or if we're just going to assume that everyone knows you at this point.
Yeah, Hannah Blackwell, and I talk about predominantly fantasy, romance, and then I do read thrillers and horrors and sci-fi as well, but I would say predominantly fantasy and romance. And I do a monthly TBR game, Once Upon a TBR game, and just all the regular BookTube stuff, occasional sprints.
Yeah, you mentioned we have also Kay's Hidden Shelf for Kayla, who is also part of our book club, who we love as well. She is one of our go-to sources for indies. So channel is also linked down below, and she's wonderful. She does a lot of author interviews and just really cool, very thoughtful videos, and has like the best ASMR voice. So if you're not following
She
her as well,
does. It's
Mhm.
amazing.
100%. I double speed a lot of people to get through videos. She's the one person I don't do. Well, no, there's more than one because some people just speak too quickly, but she's the one person I'm like, I just need to listen to it at the normal speed. Like, I just need to hear her talk. Like,
And her videos aren't
100%.
very long either, too. She's got
No.
like, you know, some people are like to do like really long videos, but hers I feel like are generally around like the 10-minute mark, maybe.
They're
She's
good
good at
pace.
not rambling. Yeah.
Mhm.
She does have a very calming voice. I want her to do audiobooks.
She needs to have an ASMR channel, like maybe like a bookish. Like I just want to hear her just
Just flipping the pages.
Tapping on the books.
I listen to ASMR a lot. So if she could just talk and tap, that'd be great.
Exactly. Well, and you may or may not know my channel if you're on here, but I'm Maria from the channel Maria Might Read That, and I talk about adult fantasy books. That's kind of my niche. I love political fantasy, so this should have been, and character-driven fantasy. So like from everything we were hearing about this series, I thought this would be right up my alley. And we'll kind of talk about if it was. But do we want to go into ratings next? If you gave it a rating, Hannah.
So I DNF'd this book halfway through.
Controversy.
I thought it was just fairly okay. I'm trying to be nice here. It wasn't great, and for me personally. And so, I mean, if I was going to rate it, I think I would give it like a generous 2-star. But I DNF'd it halfway through.
Okay. So I started off thinking, wow, this is really exciting. This is probably going to be a 3 or 4-star read. I'm really intrigued. And then I got real bored real quick. And I got to the point where I was about halfway through and I was getting ready to DNF it. And then I was like, I can't. I'm part of this book club. Like, I've got to push through. I've got to finish it. I'm the guest host. Like, I have to finish this book. So I finished it. And by the time I was done, it was, like a 2.5.
Me over here, I'm like, I started this book club and I'm just like, nope.
You did. We're giving you a pass because you needed you need to not slump right now. So
you didn't miss much. That's all I'm gonna say. Like it was kind of like you'd get and then like that's I don't know if that's a description to anyone at all listening, but that's literally it was like I felt like it was gonna get there and then it just like fell off a cliff and then you'd be like, another moment, and then it would fall off a cliff.
Because things were just happening to her. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I have heard a lot of people give it like 4 or 5 stars lately. So I'm really curious in the discussion to kind of see what everyone in the comments thinks, because I think we're pretty unanimous that we didn't like it, but I have heard really good reviews. So I think that it's kind of a polarizing one.
We were talking behind the scenes before we started the chat about all of the booktubers and friends that we know that really liked this book and or the whole series. And there's a lot of them. So it's a lot of people like it. It's just didn't work for me personally.
When I finished it, I honestly thought this is going to be a me problem. This is going to be me just not being into this particular type of fantasy because it's not my go-to type of fantasy. So I was like, it's just going to be a me problem. And then when you guys were like, yeah, not really either, I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't a me problem.
I think it's polarizing, right?
I think it's fairly polarizing. And I think I'm just trying to figure out what exactly. So I gave it 1.5 stars. It's my lowest read so far this year currently. And I also almost DNF'd, but I almost DNF'd at 25 pages. So I knew pretty quickly that the writing style wasn't for me. I picked it up, I think 3 weeks before we were supposed to have this live because I thought I'd be really on top of things and get it done. I read 25 pages, was just like, I can't right now. And then I ended up reading in the last week so that I, could then push myself through it. But there's something about the writing style that for me, and I'll dig more into this, but I felt like I was lacking the bridges between connections. I felt like there was a lot that I just was kind of not connecting for me.
Wait, Crystal, what did you say you rated it? Did you say? I missed it.
I would say a high 2.5 stars. I'm being kind. And that is purely because to me, if I DNF a book, it gets 1 star. So if I finish a book, but I wanted to DNF it, it gets at least a 2. But that's just me, how I kind of think about it.
Yeah. I'm trying out a new rating system using Cassidy's spreadsheet from Covers with Cassidy, and you plug in categories for like writing, characters, plot, and so I'm kind of testing out how that feels.
So, is that the core pile system, or is it very similar to a core pile system?
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
So I weighted for enjoyment though, so you get more, like your enjoyment matters more.
Yeah. Okay. So I haven't plugged mine into core pile yet because I use core pile. But if I put it in, I probably would end up with like a 3 because I'm really generous in my core pile because I feel really bad giving it anything like too low. But then I realized, like, Crystal, when you didn't like this book, why would you be so kind? So then I go back and adjust it. But yeah, I think definitely 2.5 would be generous.
Amy says here for complicated heroines, which I think she definitely, Queen Talien definitely is. And I think partly that's why this is so polarizing. I think that the character is really at the heart of it, and the kind of her personality you either jive with or you don't. Like I said, I have heard a lot of people actually like this book a lot, so you are not alone. Tammy says, just starting to read more fantasy and thought it was easy and fun compared to Gardens of the Moon. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars.
Well, there's that.
I will give it that. It read easily. Like, I will give it that. It wasn't a difficult read to wrap your head around. There was only 3 or 4 characters to wrap your head around. Like that, in terms of fantasy based, it was an easy read. But maybe that's the problem.
I don't know if I would say easy because the writing style jarred me a lot, but I do think it was like you could make your way through it pretty quickly. But there was just like I was pulled out of it a lot. Seeing a main character that is a fierce mom. I do agree with this.
That's one of the reasons I really like the Sword of Kaigan. Was you don't see enough of that in fantasy.
Shadow of the Gods as well by John Gwynne. Both are like, really bad. I've heard that in the second book, the Ikasar Falcon, she's even more focused on her son, and like you get much more of that. So I'm kind of sad that I'm not going to that, which I guess leads us into really quickly. Let's talk about, are we continuing on? We are not.
We are not.
So sorry for anyone who was joining us on this like trilogy read along. We have decided that we're not going to read book 2.
Because also Kay did not enjoy it either. And now I don't know if she disliked it as much as us, but overall disliked, I believe.
I think it was 3 stars, if I remember correctly from Goodreads. I think, yeah.
She is planning on continuing, just not like anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Amy has read the entire trilogy, so I'm curious what you thought of it overall, and if you liked book 1 more than book 2, or like book 2 more than book 1, anything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk spoiler free for just a little bit, and then we'll go into the actual spoilers. But what did or didn't work for you? I mean, mostly didn't. Did you was the main character the problem, or was there something else for you both?
So looking at I think the things I look at when I'm reading a fantasy especially is like characters and world building and writing style. And overall. And then plot is kind of secondary to me. When we look at the world building, I felt like boxed in a bit, and also just a very lack of explanation. And I don't like it too much at once, but I just felt like it was like she knew and everyone knew, but like we weren't really being told at all much. And then when I looked at the characters, I felt like I didn't quite understand what had happened in the past, like what was going on. I felt like we were kind of kept in the dark for so long, but not for any reason that would really help the story. Like I didn't feel that there was a good enough reason to be kept in the dark, because it totally, for me personally, really kind of ruined any possible character development or feelings I could have or connection I could have to our main character. I just couldn't get connected to her. And then the writing style, one of the things that was weird for me was her lack of description when it came to development of the world or the character, yet she would spend forever talking about food throughout the whole book. I was like, it was so jarring how she could be so descriptive and eloquent when talking about food, but nothing else. And that really annoyed me. And
I
And
don't think I
also
remember a single meal that she had in this book.
every single thing, but I'm like, can you just tell us what happened? And then I felt like with the plot, I got kind of frustrated because I didn't understand where we were going. Because she wouldn't tell us what happened, I didn't understand why she was insisting on all of this. And then things were just happening to her constantly, and she was just kind of like flopping along wherever the current would take her, it felt like. So overall, I couldn't find anything redeeming personally.
We have someone who loved the food. I genuinely don't remember a single meal, but that might be because I just
The
glossed over
food
it.
descriptions were amazing. It was so jarring that
Mhm.
the writing only seemed to be that eloquent and beautiful when talking about food, and it didn't translate into any other aspects of the book.
See, I'm the polar opposite in terms of what I look for in a fantasy. I am very plot driven. Like, I love to be taken on an adventure with the character. Yes, if there is a amazing character, I love to follow their story, but I care less about the character and more about what they're experiencing, and the adventure that they're taking, because then I find it more easy to like visualize it. And obviously world building is important as well. And I found that the plot and the world building of this was just like, I didn't know, it could have been any general town in any general place in any general time frame in any kingdom. There was no real like uniqueness about it. And I feel like the plot, as you said, like nothing really happened. She just followed all these things, but they didn't make sense until right at the end when she gave you that bit that you were missing. But saving it to the end didn't really make a lot of difference to the plot, in terms of if I'd found that out at page 25 or the end of the book, didn't really change my enjoyment of the rest of the plot, if that makes sense. So yeah,
Interesting.
overall, that's probably I'm like the same as you, but the opposite of you as well. But I agree about the food, but I don't remember any of the meals, but I just remember she was always hungry. She was just always talking about food.
I do remember her being hungry. Yeah. Like Robin Hobb and all of his breakfasts.
Yeah, but Hobbs descriptive about everything, though.
Yeah. I might just be someone who glazes over descriptions because I also don't remember food in Hobb. I think I only remember food if it like is food I want to eat myself.
Like I know exactly what Bingtown looks like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually disagree with you both because I gave plot the highest score when I was breaking it down. And that was the thing that did keep me going in this. I would have DNF'd because there were other things I wasn't liking, but like what kind of at least made it not as miserable for me personally was that I was intrigued in the plot. And there were a lot of things that I almost wish we'd stayed more with and had like, I enjoyed certain plot moments enough that I wanted more of them even. It was fairly disjointed. She was going from a lot of different points, but I found it all intriguing. In that
I think that's what I mean by the up, down, is that there was bits of plot I'd get really excited and then she'd just like stop and you'd be like, why didn't we keep following that? And then so it was like the disjoint of the plot, I think, is what made me not like the plot. Not so much what was actually happening, but it was just kind of like jarring to me.
Yeah.
Totally fair. There was like so much in the plot that she could have had several books, I think, of different events. If she had expanded each one, like there was a lot packed in this one.
But if you asked me what happened in the book, I could not tell you.
Oh, interesting.
Like, I do not remember much of, like, I can tell you like basics, but like the actual summary of like what happened in the book, because the plot was so disjointed, I felt like I would get the order of things like totally mixed up and confuse someone trying to describe it to them.
I have the opposite, but I can totally see that. Yeah. I think for me, I think I started talking about kind of like the bridges connections were missing for me, where it was like we have usually like some sort of situation and then we had a reaction to it, but I was missing the bridge that showed me why she was reacting that way. And I felt like they were withholding like character motivations, like we were talking about. Hannah was mentioning that like they kept hinting at all of these past events, but not giving us that. There were some flashbacks that came up, but I felt like we were withholding like moments that were affecting how she reacted to things. And so that character motivation wasn't there for me either. And I'm very character driven. So that's kind of what brought my score down so much. And then there was, well, when we get into spoilers, I'll talk about it, but there was a specific moment where she acted in a way where I was like, I no longer like you. Like I actively, before you were, complicated and like things like that. But like this, I feel like you didn't react in a decent human being way, and that's like you lost me there. So I had a specific moment of that, and then I also just felt like I think it was the writing style, like I mentioned, for me, that it just didn't. It felt like there should have been more eyes on it as far as editors go, almost, and like have people say like, okay, well, why is this happening? Like, why are you saying this? Expand on this. What does this mean? There was like this one paragraph where someone says something like, but you and I, we're not our fathers. Like the quote is literally, we are not our fathers. And then her response is, I hate being compared to my father. It's like, you're literally not being compared to your father. You're being uncompared, like the opposite of compared to your father. And so where I feel like what she meant was, I hate when my father is brought up in connection to me, or I hate like when any comparison is drawn, whether, you know, but we're alike or we're not. But it, like there wasn't that. I had to like explain a lot to myself rather than it being told to me. That's how I felt. Tammy says, I also feel like the main character wasn't very developed. She was very naive and thought being the queen was enough. She just went along with whatever was happening.
That's a good summary.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like, unfortunately for me, she wasn't the bitch queen. She was kind of the dumb queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean to say. And I would have forgiven that. I actually think that like if I connected with her being naive wouldn't have broken it for me.
I think that the author really kind of shot herself in the foot in a way, because I almost felt like she was keeping that key bit of information about like, okay, who she shot and why, and why the prince left. Just that initial, that little bit of information. I feel like she was holding on to it just to keep people reading till the end, instead of having people understand and create connections with the characters and with the plot and with why people were acting the way they were, so that they got to the end because they were interested. You cannot, to me, you can't put a bunch of smoke and mirrors around a character's intentions and reasons for acting the way they do. Like, I thought it could have, just with that one change, could have changed the whole book for me.
And it didn't even have to be like right at the start. She could have done like smoke and mirrors, and then like halfway through, and then you've got enough of a connection of like plot, and then you're semi-invested, and you're like, oh, this is why she's acting the way she's acting, and then you continue on with her on her, I don't want to say revenge plot, but you know what I mean, like yeah. So I agree.
Done well, like for lack of a better one that comes to mind, but like Stormlight, like the first book. I don't know if either of you, Hannah, you've read Stormlight. But we're like hiding Kaladin's, like his backstory a bit, and there's flashbacks, and like I've seen it done sort of. Kaigen, I think, also like does like I've seen it done well, where we are kind of being hidden. We're hinted at like a character's really upset about a past event and what went down, but we don't really get to know what happens until later on. And there was something about this one, I agree, that just like didn't work.
I feel like there was some flashbacks in it, but she wasn't putting enough into them earlier on. Like, I feel like they weren't paced out the right way, and she should have given a little bit more than she did when she did them.
Hoping she becomes a stronger, more confident character in book 2.
I was expecting more badassery.
I agree. Yeah.
Like you called the bitch queen. Like, come on. And I know that that's not the title anymore, but like, to me,
I feel like this isn't enough of a spoiler. We'll go into spoilers in a second, but like I feel like it's vague enough to say that
we can go into spoilers. We're 23 minutes in.
Okay, fair. Let's go into spoilers. But what I was going to say is essentially that she talks about being traumatized by having killed one man. Like she specifically says, "This is the only person I've killed, the first person." But then she's known as the queen of beheadings. So like, is it just that she's known as like the queen of ordering the beheadings, but then never watches the beheadings? And then she like kills other people and she has like one moment of like, oh, this is only the second person I've killed, but she doesn't actively react to that. Like it felt like it didn't line up. Like she was either badass half the time and like supposed to be really harsh and kind of strong and, you know, takes no prisoners. And then the other one, it's like, oh, she's making all these naive, trusting decisions and doesn't actually like know how to defend herself or hesitates. And it just didn't like, it was two people.
Even earlier on in the book, like one of her like counselors or something basically like totally disrespects her in the very beginning of the book. And she's like, well, he's kind of higher than me anyway. I'm like,
But then later on, she like lashes out at other people disrespecting her, but then never does anything. She's just always like, don't you dare disrespect me.
Yeah. I feel like you did such a good job of starting the summary that whenever we're done talking, you need to do like a little plot of what actually happened. You said you're really good with plot, because I'm so confused. I would love to have you summarize it, because I think that would be enough to make me contemplate continuing, because that was the thing. I just felt like I didn't even understand what was going on. So if I knew what was going on, I might be like, oh wow, okay, maybe I do want to know more.
Well, we could kind of follow along with the plot a bit in like discussing it.
Sure.
Basically, like she goes over there, and as we know, she meets up with the prince, and they're essentially interrupted by assassins, and then she goes on the run for a little bit. And the first kind of like big plot point that sticks out to me is that she is wandering around. She's kind of doesn't have anyone to turn to. She meets this guy Kine, who helps her, who kind of involves her into this like con that they're pulling together, which
don't even get me started on their relationship. Like, what the hell was that?
And then after that point, she like gets taken in as like she gets injured and is rescued and treated for like a stab wound and blackmailed into being a prostitute for like a split chapter.
Well, she didn't even do anything, right? Like she got out of the one guy that she was
just so good at manipulating, and like it's like 1 second she's really good at something and 1 second she's just not. And like if you can manipulate your way out with this big mob dude,
why can't you do it later?
Why can't you like navigate anything ever? I
wish we'd stayed there longer though. That was like one of the ones that I was really intrigued by, and I liked the strategy of her trying to like outsmart this guy so that she didn't have to sleep with him. But then she immediately is just like, oh, actually just take me somewhere else. And he's like, okay. Why not? Yeah, I would have loved that. Hi, Kayla. We're glad you're joining us. Hope you're feeling better. We miss you. We were talking about how amazing you are and how amazing your voice is earlier.
We need to do a bookish ASMR channel for you to do the tips.
Yeah. Remind us.
Talking.
I think you gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but let us know if that's correct. We were talking about that too.
Sorry. But yeah, they're weird, like romance, non-romance, just like what was the point of it? It was just so unnecessary. It wasn't even like a slow burn or a like weird like friendship with a little bit of extra. It was like it just kept almost leading towards there and being like, nah. It's just like, what was the point of it? And it made no difference to the plot whether they were in a relationship or not.
And there's that moment where he says he's only helping her because of this like past love that he had that he let down, which we never find out why, like how he really ruined that relationship. But that to me, like from that point on, it felt like he wasn't really like he was attracted to her, but I didn't think he was actually doing it for the romance. And then she has, Hannah, you probably don't know this because you didn't read that point, but she has a dalliance or romance with Agus, the captain, like the guard captain that she had exiled as well. And he's like part of this big whole plot twist that we have where essentially he's the one that she slept with right before the marriage, and so the prince partly left because he's not sure who their son is, who he belongs, like whose son it is. But when he kisses her, like the guard shows up and he's like super devoted to her, and he's like done everything she's ever asked, and he kisses her, and she like has no character reaction. Like we don't know how she feels either way. Did that drive you crazy?
We never knew how she felt about anything. I didn't.
Yeah, but like that whole like love triangle with the other guy just chilling on the side with his trauma, like it was so what it irritated me, this like romance no romance thing. Like,
well, it's like a love, not a square but kind of a square, because we also have the prince, and that's like the only thing we're told about her feelings. The whole book is that she's like in love with this prince. But
she was in love with the prince, but then she almost had this weird like side relationship with the guy that helped her swindle. What's his name? Roder. The guy that helped her swindle at the start. Rael.
Oh
yeah. Oh no.
Kine.
Yeah, that's it.
Who's Rael? I saw Tammy's comment. Which one was that?
Yes, rated it 3 stars. Had interesting structures and ideas, but couldn't stand the main character, her husband. Yes. Oops.
Rael was the husband, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Listen, I have thoughts on Rael. Mostly that he is a hypocritical, terrible person. Because how dare he be mad at her for having slept with someone before their wedding when he also slept with someone and potentially sired bastards. Like, so ridiculously hypocritical.
I thought it was confirmed he did sire a bastard.
No, I didn't.
Maybe I just misinterpreted that. Sorry. No, never mind.
No, but like, he's supposed to be this super righteous guy who's like always by the rules, and the reason that he like spends 5 years trying to find an elixir or like a magic solution to prove that, like, find out who the son is and test his DNA essentially is because he's like, I am so righteous and like everything has to be done by the book. But then he's not acting righteous himself. It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Did you think, so again, Hannah, I know you didn't get this, but did you think that he had betrayed her and had set the assassin's crystal, or did you think that he had, like, that there was more to it?
No, I never suspected him. I felt like he was like partially involved, but I didn't suspect him as an individual. I felt like he was almost like tricked into being involved if he was involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
She had a reset to get development and identity. I agree with
And
this.
she says it so correctly. Every time she gets pulled into a new situation, like
by its target spoilers. Speak all the spoilers you like now, Amy. We're in spoiler territory.
I think Amy means for like books 2 and 3.
She read the other.
Oh.
Which I would say spoil that to us because we probably won't read, but Kayla will and Tammy will. So
can you like message us in a group chat on IG and spoil it for us so we can know what happens in the rest of the series without having to read it? Because that's probably all I want to do is know what happens. I don't want to read it. I just want to know what happens.
Yeah, especially with like epic fantasy series. If I'm not going to give it at least like 3.5 stars, I just DNF with the first book because there's such a commitment. You know what I'm saying? They're so long.
I'm now a little bit like, I'm in a weird position because one of my favorite series, I read the first book and it was 3 stars and I almost DNF'd, and then I loved the rest of it so much. So now every time I read a book where I'm like, there's potential, part of me is like, what if this is the same thing? And I've gotten worse at DNFing as a result.
But it's okay if you give it like enough of a 3-star to know there's potential. But like I feel like you can tell.
I think this one had potential.
You know what I'm saying? I don't.
I think also because it is a self-published, like it was a self-published book that was picked up by a publisher afterwards. I also, part of me thinks like maybe the first book did have less eyes on it and less editors maybe. And maybe book 2, like the writing style, because that was like my biggest thing. Maybe it got smoother. Maybe there was more like kind of let more of those bridges that I was missing. But yeah, what did you all think of, or I guess, again, I don't remember, Hannah, if you got up to the point, but Ubek, the creepy emperor's 5th son who tries to rape her and has this whole, like, we're destined to rule together.
He was so creepy from the start. And every single time his name was mentioned, I was like, I just would have a shiver. Like, he was gross. And although he was not described like this, I just pictured him as this, like, you know, the guy from Harry Potter who transforms into a rat? Oh, that's what I pictured every single time that he was mentioned. And I know that's not what he was described as, but I could not picture him as that.
That's right.
Hold on, see that now.
Peter Pettigrew?
Peter Pettigrew.
Yes, Pettigrew. Yeah. Like, I just pictured him being like, I love you. Like, just gross. I don't know. I just couldn't picture him any other way.
He was so unhinged. I feel like he was he was maybe a flat character and that he was only that note, but I kind of like how he was written because he was so viscerally, like, just
so weirdly, the scenes with him were probably the most interesting to read because I actually invoked emotion in me as a reader because I cared about him as a character being this creep. But yeah,
absolutely. I had Maria spoil the rest of the book for me backstage before we started, just so I could just know.
Yeah.
Kayla said in her review, has potential for an interesting character arc, but do I really want to read another 600 pages to find out? A mood. And usually
Mhm.
people say like it has to be, you have to get to the last book for things to really.
That's sad.
No, it needs to keep me going the whole time. Otherwise, it's just not going
Mhm.
to happen. I'm not going to invest 1,500 pages to find the happy ending. Like I'm
That's
just
why I
not.
haven't tried Zodiac Academy.
Mhm.
Have either of you guys tried that?
I
No,
got
but
to
I
book,
have heard you have to
I
like read
got to
5
book
books.
3,
Mm.
and I stopped halfway through book 3. There was a scene with bodily fluids that I just like, nah, this is where I cut it. Like bully romance is okay, but this is just too far.
Yeah, I don't want bully romance either.
See, I don't like boy romances because I just feel like it's like immature.
Yeah.
Isn't it like 2 characters bullying each other?
No,
one-
no, it's
Or
like
1 character bullying?
it's
the
like the 4. They're not brothers, but there's 4 guys bullying 2 siblings. I think.
Oh, I meant bully romances in general.
Mhm.
Oh,
Like, isn't it like the love interests just bullying each other? Or
kind of, yeah. It's more so one gets more bullied than the other, and they're kind of trying to like pip each other at who's worse than the other.
well, I mean, I have my own weird romance things, so
Yeah.
I'm not one to like judge.
So
I just
I went to my book club last night, or not last night, night before, and I was trying to explain my book that I'm currently reading, which is a dark romance where the main character's in witness protection, and everyone was just looking at me like, why would you read that? And I'm like, just trust me, it's a thing, like it's good, I promise.
I'm over here like I like the double eggplants and the alien and the like reverse harem, but yeah, bully I haven't really been into.
Yeah, I like clean cut romances where people are nice, to be honest. Amy says, if I don't like it, then I don't continue. Every minute spent reading something I don't like is a minute I could be reading something I love.
Yep.
Yes.
That is
I totally agree.
very well said. That's what I need to channel that energy.
Hi, Cassidy.
So I was mentioning that there was a scene where like she lost me, Queen Talion just lost me as a character.
Yeah.
And I don't know
trying to figure out what scene you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I don't know if either of you like paid attention, like maybe it like impacted you as well. But do you remember the scene with Kyne where I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but basically like he comes back for like the 90th time and tries to help her. He's like always helping her.
He just conveniently appears.
Yeah. And she is still, oh no, sorry, it wasn't this. It was there were a lot of similar scenes actually. So like there was a lot with Kyne where he like comes back and tries to help her and she's always ungrateful and she's always mean. She's never like nice to him. And I'm just like, why is he running after her? But it was with Agus, who's actually the captain of the guard, that she like was her childhood best friend and aka lover as well. And he comes back. And he also is super devoted. He like she had told him to like never come back or speak to her again. And he like listened to that until her life was in danger. Like he's just like the most loyal guard you could ever find. Yeah. And he comes back and she literally goes on a rant to him about like how, oh, you come running the first time I have one stumble. You don't trust me at all. You think that like I can't do anything. And I was just like, at this point, we're like 2/3 into the book. So she's now been like kidnapped multiple times, stabbed, assassins have been after her. Like it's not one stumble. She is in a mess. And this is like her friend who's coming back to help her and who like has always been loyal, and she's just being ungrateful and just being completely like mean. And she's just like, you don't trust me. She's being a bitch. And I was just like, I'm over it. I'm out. I don't like her.
Yeah. I pictured him to be, I don't know why, but I always picture characters from like different movies when I read books like this. But like I pictured him to be like the guy from Game of Thrones who ends up with the blonde chick. Oh my god, I'm having a mental blank on character names right now. The one who's like loyal to the one with the dragons, and he's just like always there. I don't know. Anyways, so I pictured him as being that loyal, like just will do anything for her. And like, so yes, that scene definitely annoyed me.
She doesn't deserve the loyalty. Like, where is it coming from? Yeah.
No.
I DM'd it similar, but it wasn't the same scene, but it was super similar because it was I was looking and it was she basically was like on the run from that guy that bought her. and she runs into one of her guards or one of her like
Wait, this is the
officials.
scene.
And she's just like, he's like, okay, like, I can help you now. We'll take you back to your people. And she's just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I think this might be the same scene.
I'm pretty sure this is the same scene.
Yeah. She's just like, and this is also the point, or maybe it's later, but there's a point where she like is now convinced that Prince Rael has been the one who sent assassins after her, and yet she's still like, no, I still have to go rescue him from like being kidnapped, so that we can try and like make this marriage work, so that we can hold this kingdom together. And I'm like, woman, he's been like, if you believe that he sent assassins after you, there is no fixing this mess. She never knows how to quit. We talked about the scene where she goes to collect her family's crest on the stamp to prove her identity. Nothing happened with the stamp after. I forgot about this, but you were so right.
I think I missed that.
There's just so many plot holes that like I didn't even think about that. Now that they're being brought up, I'm just like, it makes me even more mad.
It's like, what happened with this?
I feel like this is like a joint rant review.
Yeah, we need to be maybe a little nicer. Agus had ulterior motives. He's in love with her and she knows it. With her past, she can't trust his intentions. At least that's how I read it. Okay. I think if it hadn't been that she had also been mean to Kyne, who had only like ever helped her, I think it made sense that at first she like didn't trust him, was like, why are you helping me so much? Because Kyne had been going like way too out of his way to help her. But after like the 100th time when he proved that she could trust him, at some point she needed to be more grateful for that, and she still treats him like dirt. So I think for me it was all of it compounded.
Yeah.
But I do think Agus, like, he was a weird character because he also like at one point he's fighting with the other captain, Nor, and he's saying that like Captain Nor needs to be more respectful toward the queen, but then he himself is being really informal and not respectful. So I think his character too like was very flip-floppy. One of the only people who didn't expect anything from her is Kyne.
I agree.
think Kyne was probably my favorite character.
But the one person that I wanted her to give something to was Kyne, and she gave him nothing but like, thanks for the help. Like, and I was like, come on, he deserves so much more than that.
Why did he do it?
Why did he help? Oh, so spoiler territory for that. Basically what happened is he had fallen in love with a Jinsayan or Jensen woman, however they say it in there, from her country, and like at his university where he was doing his medical degree. And somehow it's hinted, like he says he ruined that relationship. And
so I think I did see that.
Now he like always wants to help like women from Jinsaying.
That's why it's something about like a soft spot for Jinsaying women.
Yeah.
That's like not enough, I don't think.
I feel like the thing
with more. Like
there definitely could have been more.
Yeah, she could have kind of like buffed that out because helping once or twice, but like the amount of you have to think he runs with this crew, right? And these people are all intertwined, like that these like criminals and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? So he's really putting a lot on the line to help her, but for it to be just that, like I feel like there needs to be a little bit more, you know what I mean?
Without spoilers, Amy was the one who'd read the whole trilogy, wasn't she? Amy, does Kyne come into book 2 and book 3?
I would be curious to know.
Obviously,
say, like,
I don't know if it's spoiler to know whether he's in the book at least. Like,
I don't think so. We know he's alive by the end of this one.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, with him too, it was weird to me that he was so low on the like totem pole for the low bonds like group. He was losing all the money and was like in debt, but then he's able to convince Lobon, who's the guy who like bought her essentially from the prostitute, from the brothel. He's able to convince him to not like chase after her after she escapes because he has no control. So that to me didn't line up. And then I also didn't like that Queen Talia and like her reaction when she finds out that one of Kyne's sisters has been taken hostage. She's just like, I'm going to go on this trip over there to that like place over there, try to rescue my husband. But if I manage to somehow come back and like help you get your sister out of the hostage situation, like maybe that'll happen at some point. But my priorities are over there. Like,
Yeah.
Like they've done all the good things for her, but let's talk about the world and the histories of the kingdom. Kayla says that was a highlight, and the love is blind concept was done well to a point. She had blinders on while also being singularly obsessed with that love.
And I think too, the love that she really had for him was more a love for her son. I would say too,
Yeah.
like she was very devoted to trying to make up for their failed relationship for her son. I think that's a lot of why she was going so far, was because her son wanted her to bring her father back so badly, and kind of missed out on having his father in his life. And she, I would assume, has some guilt, but that could have really been fleshed out more with her actual feelings of guilt instead of us having to speculate as to it.
Mm. So you obviously went into like the history of the kingdoms and their war and like the political side of it when you did your intro. I found that like that was really easy to understand at the start, and I feel like it became kind of blurred near the end. Like it was kind of like there was too much weird extra motivations that I was just kind of like, that was there, and then it just stopped kind of being a key point as to why people were doing what they were doing later on.
I agree. I didn't understand the I agree that I liked the world and how it was created, and I liked the concept of these different clans and their like all of the setup of it, but I thought that the political stuff, like you said, Crystal, got really kind of buried because there was a lot of talk about like the warlords are now like there's a brewing war that happens about 2/3 into the book because she's disappeared without a word to her council. And so I thought that like it didn't quite make sense that now the warlords would be reacting the way they were, but they've been able to like have 5 years of stability even when the prince left. There were just things that didn't quite line up to me as far as like we have these gangs that are, or these clans, sorry, that are like on the brink of war with each other. And somehow she was able to maintain that equilibrium for 5 years.
And then she disappears for like less than a month and everything just goes to crap. Like I don't think she was enough of an influence to stop that crumble.
But I did like the concept of like we have these warlords and just like the whole idea of it, especially compared to the empire where she's at, where like the way that they're governed. So I liked that there was like a local like gang that ran the area that she's in, but then you have like the different area that's like this walled fortress that she goes to where Ubeck is, and like it all felt very like I could picture the differences of the different areas really well. So we have Tammy saying that her loyalty runs deep, would have given up on Rael, though. Agreed. Everyone again, we do see everyone again and more characters are introduced.
I'm curious what additional characters would be introduced. Like, I'd love to like try and figure out who would be introduced based on where we were left off, but I couldn't even take a guess, I don't think.
I would want to see more of her son, but he's pretty young in this book, so I don't know how that would work. Helps some things make sense, but my word, she was infuriating. I think for me, the level of blindness again, though, was tough because it's like, I think that's where the connections were also like the bridges weren't there because we're showing the flashbacks and they have like the moment where she supposedly, like first we have the meeting with Rael and her when they're young children, and he's kind of rude to her because she's dressed in common people's clothes and he assumes that she's not anyone important, so he like is really rude and kicks her out because he's righteous by the rules. And so she's mad at him. And then the second time she meets him, they face down a dragon together and she like falls in love with him because he kind of steps in to protect her. But I feel like I didn't fully like, and then they go to school together and we see those interactions and he's kind of rude to her again. And then he sleeps with someone else. Like I feel like there wasn't enough there in the flashbacks for me to have like arrived at the point of her having a love is blind sort of mentality.
I think though that what Hannah says is a good point, that a lot of it comes from her love of her son rather than so much the love of him. It's like the love of the idea of a joint family rather than wanting him back as an individual.
I agree. Proving yourself as a ruler capable of keeping peace.
I feel like she wanted to prove herself, but she didn't want to do the work and growth in order to do that. I feel like she was kind of a lazy ruler. Like
This
she was
comment
being
agrees
told
with you.
by like a lot of her advisors and stuff, like you need to do this or act this way or like control yourself a little bit or whatever it is. And she just had no interest. And there was like no thought as to why they said that or no thought as to her actions. It was just like moving on. Like,
I
I
just
don't
felt
know.
like she made bad decisions. Like she specifically didn't go to the palace that they were supposed to go to. That would be like the place of their rule that would have represented this alliance. And she
Right.
stayed in her like Wolf of Oren-Yaro clan's like headquarters, which I feel like if you're trying to make an alliance work, even if the prince of the other group ran off, but you're still trying to be like, look, I want more than just like my loyalty is to the whole kingdom. I feel like that didn't make sense. Like there were other little things too where I wanted her to like I wouldn't say lazy, I would say she actively made choices as a ruler personally, but I feel like they were the wrong ones maybe.
Mm. And it felt like there was so many times she could have returned to her clan.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there were times where things got in her way, but it felt like sometimes it was herself getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah, Kate, I really wanted to like this because between the dragons and the Filipino lore and everything like that, like the concept is so cool. The
All the right
concept is so
ingredients.
cool. And the dragon stuff was really cool too. And
What did you all think of, or I guess really just Crystal and everyone in the comments who read it, what did you think of like the magical battle that we had between her and Yubeck, where there was a lot of the like magic being used?
I didn't get that.
That was probably the most interesting scene in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of like out of nowhere at the same time. Like in terms of the magic just kind of just being like, whoa, this is here. But that's probably just because I was already so checked out by that part of the book that I probably missed something that lined it up.
There was multiple times that happened to me in this book that I was like, I thought I was paying attention, but how did we get here?
Yeah, that's what I mean by I feel like the plot was like I couldn't tell you what happened because I feel like there's bits missing, not because they necessarily were missing in the book, but because I would be like, whoa, we're somewhere else now. I felt like we were just here. And it was because I was obviously listening on audio, but also reading along physically. And I still felt like
when she woke up and she was like, oh, I'm a prostitute now.
Yeah.
I was like, wait.
Wait, what?
Yeah. I really liked the magic as well. I think that it was purposeful that was left to the end of the book so that it kind of will probably be developed more in the rest of the series, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But I think it was one of the best parts of the world building. Kayla says that Queen Talian had no confidence and seemed like she didn't know who she was, only the duty she was meant to uphold, which was a wife for a treaty.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Basically a pawn to the other clan leaders.
I think she had like blinders on and she was like, okay, I need to do my wifely duty. That's the only way to fix the situation. But meanwhile, while she was like this, she was ignoring every other important aspect of ruling. I felt like she was talking about like the way things had fallen apart, like the garden that her dad had built and like all these other things that she wasn't paying attention to anything at all. It felt like she had blinders on.
I just think the like 5 years or however long the gap was, if everything stayed stable like within that time, I don't think there's as much like evidence to back up her need to then go and get Prince Rael. I think that like she could have clearly made it work otherwise, like just as the ruler herself. I think it should have fallen apart when he left and then she has to go after him because she's a representative of like this clan that the rest of the kingdom is really scared of. And so I think like if that had happened, it would have been more realistic for me personally. Yubeck is a mage, and I'm wondering if he really died. I think the next book will go more into the magic. Yeah, do we think he died? Thoughts?
I feel like it's too convenient that he's died. I feel like he has to come back.
There was someone's reaction who knew about magic that was like, I think that she said, oh, he died or something. And she's like, but he was a Agan or a mage. And then there was like a pause. So I think the other person also was like assuming that there was a way out of it. One of the best scenes for me is when she saw her dead brother and she finally gets some self-clarity and identity. Then it all gets stripped away.
But Tammy, maybe it's like in Malazan where people just become puppets. Tammy will know what I'm talking about.
Definitely had the attitude of why don't the lords respect me, continues to do nothing to gain their respect or trust. Yes.
Yep. Basically.
I think let's talk about, I guess, the idea of like, do we think that it's correct to call her the bitch queen? Like, do we think when you heard of this series sold as like the Chronicles of the Bitch Queen, did it live up to that for you?
I'm not a big fan of that word, so I just don't think it's necessary in any circumstance. I mean, like I cuss up a storm, but I just don't think it's like necessary, especially it's used so much when we look at women in power positions. So, and I would assume that's maybe why it got changed. I'm not sure. So I don't think it's apt or appropriate just because I don't appreciate it. So, but that's like a personal thing, right?
I think it changed my expectations. So as I said, I expected more like badassery from her rather than her just personally being a unpleasant person. Like,
I
so
agree.
like obviously that word can be used for two definitions.
Yeah.
And I was expecting I'm going to be this badass bitch that like takes something down from the inside or really like gets mad and like gets my revenge or like something like that. And that's what I kept expecting. And instead I got someone who was just horrible.
Because usually men use that term with women in positions of power because they are getting things done that the men don't like, or they feel like that woman shouldn't have that much power, which then makes you think she's getting a lot done. She is powerful. She is. And yeah, like you said, that just wasn't the case.
I was expecting more like a Red Queen kind of thing where she like took stuff down from and like had that like I hate the word badassery, but that's all I can think of to describe one of those in that power. But like I just didn't get it. Didn't get that at all. I just got someone who was a horrible human to everybody around her except her son.
Yep. I also don't like that word in like real life when people use it. I just don't like it at all. But in terms of this, I thought it would be a great way. I thought it like what you were saying, Crystal, that I expected it to be like a reclaiming of the word and it would be used in like a positive way. And I didn't get that. And so the expectations, were not there for like set me up for failure in that way too. And I agree that like I didn't expect her to not be nice, and I also didn't expect badassery from her. I actually just thought that she would be a really good ruler, but that because like we talked about in a lot of the comments, and Hannah I think brought this up as well, like women in any type of position of power are often just for being good at their job at a lot of times are villainized. And so I thought that's what it would be. I thought it would just be her being a really good ruler on her own without her husband who had left. And that's what would have given her this like moniker.
Or like organized women, that's like a positive trait, but organized women nag. They're naggers. It's the same, bitch you usually assume would be, you assume is a woman that gets shit done.
Or isn't like just constantly like, there to be super, nice or coddling you. Just
right. Yeah. Which it's not that she's nice or coddling. She just seems to have she just doesn't really care about people's opinions, and not in a cool way. She's just like, okay,
people.
Moving on.
Period. Yeah.
It's not in a like, that's your opinion, but I'm going to do so much better than you. It's a, whatever, bye. Like take that opinion elsewhere.
Such child things do, yeah.
She's like a 13-year-old like playing video games, like not wanting to do their homework. I don't know.
I will say, shout out to Shadow of the Gods and the Bloodsworn series. That has one of like my favorite mother characters. We brought it up earlier, but
I really want to read that.
She is very much like she's what I think we're all hoping to get from Talia in here.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true too, Tammy. I heard a lot about how she was a morally gray character, but I actually disagree. I just find her to be unlikable. She had a moral code. It might not be the same moral code we might agree with today in modern day in, well, I was going to say North America, but and Australia. But But
modern day
moral code,
society.
She was just unlikable because I felt like she was kind of lazy and she kind of just didn't really care except for about her kid. And she says she cares about the kingdom, but her actions don't show it. She doesn't do anything at all with conviction. Sorry.
So if you could pick one positive from the book, what would it be?
Trying here.
I didn't know if that's a whole other category you've got, but I'm just going to put it there because I feel like we've smashed it for the last 40 minutes. I think we should probably say something kind.
We talked about like characters, plot, world building. So any of those, anything you liked within that, absolutely.
I think that I liked the concept and I really liked the concept.
So the beginning, the general idea.
I liked the fact that it ended. No, I'm just kidding. I agree. I liked the concept. I feel like it had all the right ingredients. She just put them in the wrong order.
Yes.
So like it had a lot of things that I would usually love, but I just didn't feel the connection between it. So in terms of like individual parts, I liked that. And I did like the magic. I will say that I liked the magic, and the action scenes were quite exciting to read.
The food sounded delicious.
I talked about it earlier, but I really actually liked the plot. Like that was a really high score for me. I think everything else got like 3s and 4s. That was, I think, around like a 7 or an 8. It was I was really intrigued by the plot. And for me, it's rare for the plot to be what's keeping me reading a book, because that's usually just not a focus. It's like the plot is very much not even secondary. It's like 3rd or 4th in my priority list. And so for this one, it's like that's what kept me turning the pages. I really liked. I was intrigued by all of it. And I get what you're saying about it being jarring, but I liked all of the things that were happening. Like I liked her ending up in the brothel and having to strategize her way out of that. I liked her being then like having to run away from this gang leader, and how she's then getting to know Kine and his family. And then she goes to like the other area where she, the like fortress place where Ubeck is trying to like coerce her into marriage, and she's running away from that. And then we are back to like her being on the run, and like I just liked I thought all of it was really interesting. There was never like a down moment for me as far as that. Even the flashbacks, like all of the plot things that were happening in the flashbacks, I thought was intriguing.
I definitely feel that there were parts though that kept me more excited, and I wanted to go back to those quicker. But yeah, I agree.
I think it's funny that Maria has the most positive things to say, and she gave it the lowest score out of all of us.
That is true. It's because
she understood it the most out of all of this, because I just was so distraught and I got confused. You didn't even finish it.
Well, you read it a month ago. I read it this week.
Yeah, so I read it a month ago too. So
it's fresh in my mind. But also plot for me, like I said, is the lowest priority. So just in terms of like everything else, like I look for good writing style and I look for good characters, and I want my enjoyment to be high. And so the plot wasn't enough to save it, but that on its own was the highlight. Kay liked the villain, the ideas, and the episodic nature of it. Episodic's a good way to say it, to put it as well. And as a character-driven reader, the main character was weak, and I would have preferred to see more consistent development from those events. Yeah. And I know, Amy, I'm so sorry. we felt bad. We wish someone had loved it so we could have had the opposite perspectives here.
We usually are so much more mixed on a book, and it's so interesting because it's such a divisive book that I assumed we'd have a couple love and a couple hate, and we just happen to all be on one side. But usually
which is so weird because we are different readers and we read different things and enjoy different things about books. So I thought that we would have had a bit more of a different split too.
Like I remember Dragon Mage, like half of us basically really disliked it and half of us really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that one was very much like very divided in that sense. Tammy liked the book and plans to read the next one. I'm really happy for you. I think that's awesome. This was like a series I was really excited for, so I hope you love the rest of it.
And I think it's wonderful that a lot of people enjoy it, because there should be more women fantasy authors out there that are able to get their books picked up and published, and especially ones that are not like a Western POV. kind of situation, and especially ones where you have a more mature mother as the main character. So a lot of great things going for it. So I'm really glad that a lot of people enjoyed it because it offers up more varied voices in the genre.
We did talk about too how we liked the world and the setup, and I think at the very beginning we talked about how it was a Filipino inspired series and book. The author's Filipino, and so I was reading the extras at the back of the book. I don't know if either of you looked at those, but there's a lot of talk about how the Filipino inspiration went into building the world, and I thought that was really cool and interesting as well. So yeah, I like that books like these exist. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone else have anything to say?
Do we have any predictions for the next few books? Not that we're going to read them, but maybe Kayla or anyone, Tammy and Amy, can let us know later if they're correct.
I definitely think that he's still alive and will come back to play like a partial role. I think the son is gonna, and like his paternity doubt is definitely gonna play a huge conflict in the second book. And I think that's why she's going to become like more defensive as a mother in the second book, because she's going to have to try and like prove that to keep the relationship together. My prediction is that he's not the father and that the man she slept with is the father, because I think that that's just going to create like this extra controversy that she may not have been able to create otherwise. But that's pretty much my only predictions.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's not the father. Especially since it was hinted that like there's a way now to like confirm. I also think that the fact that she didn't kill the prince, like Prince Rael at the end, is going to come back to haunt her. I think that she's going to really regret that moment.
Oh yeah. But I know that like she couldn't. There's too much, like as you said, the blinded by love. Like
I get the hesitation. Actually, that was one moment where I was like, I too would have hesitated. Like I get it. But I think interesting. Do we think that she's going to end up ruling on her own in the end then? I think that would be cool. That would be a cool way to end the series.
I think so. I think that the author's main like concept or idea is to make her learn to be strong, like as an individual and as a mother without needing him. And she went on this adventure to try and like bring him back. It failed. And I think she's going to learn to be able to rule on her own and keep the peace without him, like she has been doing for the last 5 years. And I think I think she'll end up ruling on her own.
I agree. I do think that I dislike his character more than Queen Talien, but we're also not getting his POV, which I also would be curious if the next few books give us more POVs, or could we stay in her mind? Were you here? Wait, what? Oh no, okay. Do you have, so Pettigrew was Ubeck, right? That you imagined?
Yeah, Pettigrew was Ubeck. Yeah.
Okay, what was Rael? Did you have an image for him?
I'm trying to pick someone now. No, probably not. Maybe like Gustav from
I can see that.
What? Who?
From Beauty and the Beast, right?
Gustav, yeah.
Yeah.
From Beauty and the Beast.
What's his name?
Really handsome, but you just want to punch him in the face because it's
Gaston. Yeah.
Oh, Gaston. Yes.
Gaston. Yeah.
He's the Gaston. I was like,
I immediately was like, the buff guy. Yeah. The one who like sings.
Gaston and Olaf have a baby.
Blonde, not brunette. I'm picturing him blonde, not brunette.
Okay, so I guess we're about to wrap up, but do we want to talk about our next book club pick?
Yes, we are going to be doing, we're going to be reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. That's a long name, and I'm always like, am I saying this like in the right order?
Is there enough letters in that to shorthand that and make like a acronym of some kind?
I just think of it as Emily Wilde.
Yeah, and it's by Heather Fawcett, and I think she's got a history of writing middle grade books. And it's getting a lot of buzz. I think it's going to be like a cozy fantasy with a little bit of romance involved as well. And so we're going to be doing that. Our guest host is going to be Kristen Craves Books. And so we're going to have our live show for that one in the beginning of April. So this is going to be the pick for February and March. And so yeah,
Yay.
it's gonna be a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of people are reading it, like starting to read it right now and talking about it, especially after the buzz that Legends and Lattes got. There's I feel like gonna be a lot of new cozies, like cozy fantasies coming out, which I'm very excited about because I loved Legends and Lattes. So I'm excited. Plus the book, wait, I have it right here. Hold on.
Both of those, like Legends and Lattes and this one, are ones that I had no plans to read. Like I had no intention of reading, and then everyone was so happy and excited about them that now I'm like so on board to read them.
So it's beautiful. And it's like a naked hardcover.
Oh.
There's not a slipcase on it, which is
one.
like my thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love when they're like that. So I'm excited.
Beautiful.
No,
I
it's
genuinely
not available on KU, is it?
I don't think so. It's a new release, so I don't
Didn't
think.
so.
Yeah, but I genuinely thought it was like actually like a fairy. Like, have you ever read those like dragonology books? Like, I thought it was a fairy collection.
Ooh.
Chapter headers are beautiful. Ooh, it smells good.
So excited.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm very excited for this.
You
Abby Salter and I have very similar reading taste, and she adored it.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives me hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Is it
I'm
one that you're
excited.
planning to pick up in general? Crystal, is that one that you're planning to pick up as well?
I don't actually own it, so I'd have to try and get my hand on a copy. And Australian libraries are like so far behind American libraries. So unless I can get the audiobook from my American library, that's an e-library, I probably won't be able to read it because I won't have a copy of it because it's not released in Australia yet, I don't think.
Fair.
So,
I'd be
Really?
curious.
I might be able to get it from Amazon. I was just quickly looking and I couldn't find it, but
well, guys, I have to head out here. But I had a good time talking with you guys, even though it wasn't like the best book for me personally. I still had a good time like working it out, like what happened and everything like that. So I had a good time.
I'm glad we had people in the comments who loved it. A, because I want people to be loving the books that we are doing as book club reads, and B, because I love hearing the perspectives. So thank you all for joining us and chatting.
And thank you for having me as a guest host this month. I had so much fun.
Thank you.
So good to have you.
Talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.